Yay, technology. So we're really, really honored to be presenting the first JCF webinar on our approach to community-supported beekeeping. And so in this webinar, we'll be going through basically all of the different elements of what we lump together as community-supported beekeeping, and sharing some of the resources that we've developed that we would love to share with any other JCF organizations that could make use of them. So the whole intention, as I understood it, behind the JCF webinars was to be able to facilitate the sharing. So any of the materials or activities that we cite in this presentation, like, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are very glad to share them. So yeah, I'm Lisa.
I'm Sabrina. Hi everyone. Usually we start our presentations with an opening circle, but I think that's probably not possible right now. So we decided we would just share our stories and how we came to be so committed to helping our pollinator friends. So I think for both of us, it kind of started at Isabella Friedman during Adama and Teva, where we really deepened our connection to the natural world and to Jewish tradition through both of those programs. I remember being on in the Sadeh with Jamie, who was the resident beekeeper there. We lost her. Okay, I'll just keep talking. And she taught us all about the social dynamics of the hive and asked us to each take on a role and act out whatever role we were assigned. So I was the queen bee, and from there it's been a pretty deep love affair. So a few years later, that was 2005, and then in 2013, Risa and I were granted access to an incredible piece of land, an hour northwest of Toronto, 114-acre property. And we decided the first project we would do there was keep bees. It seemed like a radical idea at the time, but it's actually become one of our strongest programs, and it's evolved and expanded, and you'll hear all about the evolution of the program.
Okay, so we're going to attempt to share our screen so you can see some sweet photos of what we're describing. Please bear with. Okay.
Do you know where everyone went?
Okay, maybe can somebody unmute themselves and tell me if you can do it?
Yeah, and for everyone who's watching, I hope that you can see the full screen. You should be able to see the full screen of the presentation. You can also make Zoom a full screen. So if you make Zoom itself full screen on your screen, and then the presentation should be full screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. And you should also be able to still have Risa and Sabrina on the right-hand side of your program that's open. So I hope that's good for everybody.
Good for us.
Okay, great.
So for some reason, we can't see the little heads. We can only see the PowerPoint presentation, so it feels like we're just talking to a computer. So if people are waving, we cannot see you. Needs to interrupt at any point, you'll have to unmute yourself in order for us to be able to hear you.
I can see all the beautiful faces.
Okay,
so.
Great. If we're missing anything, because we're literally just talking into a computer right now. Okay, so just a little bit of context for those of you that don't already know Sai and Shoresh and what we do. At Shoresh, our mission is to educate, to inspire, to empower our community to act as Shomrei Adama, protectors of the earth. And ultimately what we're trying to accomplish through all of our different programs, projects, activities is to demonstrate that environmental ethics are core Jewish values, and that the spheres of capitalism and Jewish traditions are intimately linked with one another. In terms of how we do this, how we nurture, God willing, a generation of Shomrei Adama, we have 4 areas of programming: nature-based Jewish education, self-explanatory, what we call tzedakah from the ground up, which is growing food with for vulnerable community members who wouldn't necessarily otherwise have access to fresh, local, organic produce. Environmental action are our stewardship initiatives, so an opportunity to put Jewish environmental values into practice. And then what we consider to be the byproduct of our environmental initiatives are our sustainable Jewish products. So our honey, our beeswax candles, Shabbat candles, Hanukkah candles, which, like I said, are really the byproduct of the environmental initiatives that we're doing. And we'll get into how that's all related together for what we call community-supported beekeeping. Say that was really sweet about our beekeeping, and is that it's really been an opportunity to bring all of these different areas together, to weave in education, to make sure that we're honoring the value of tzedek in different ways, to be caring for the natural world, and to be sharing the products that come from those initiatives with our wider community.
So why beekeeping? Well,
Sabrina, I just want to interrupt for a second. There's a cursor on the top of your screen. I think other people might see it. I don't know why it's.
Does
Yeah.
it make it disappear?
Okay. Perfect. That's great.
Okay. So why beekeeping? Well, first and foremost, as I said, we're both in love with bees. So love is the underlying force. But another reason why is because, as I'm sure everybody knows, then all pollinators are having a tough time. And we felt like as humans and as Jews, we needed to respond to the crisis that they were facing. So we decided to do that, and we decided that we could figure out ways to do that from a uniquely Jewish perspective, weaving in different ethics and values that we'll outline throughout the presentation. Yeah, it was the perfect moment where we could take a critical environmental issue, Jewish values, weave them together in a tangible way, and get honey out of it at the same time. The beekeeping and bees fit really nicely into Jewish environmental programming in that there is something tangible. So you have this contemporary issue where, pollinators are in a state of crisis. You have Jewish rituals that depend on healthy bee populations, apples and honey. And so it was this beautiful marriage between environmental issues, Jewish tradition, and a way to respond to them.
Okay, we made a graphic to just to somehow illustrate what we consider supported beekeeping. So community-supported beekeeping for us brings together people and pollinators and grounds it all within the context of Jewish values, like Sabrina was talking about. Some of the values that we continue to continuously draw on and incorporate into our approach to beekeeping, into our educational programs, are front of you. So the first, le'ovda u'leshomra, I'm going to assume that this group of people are familiar with the source text that we're drawing from. I'm happy to share more information about these if you're not, but this idea that it is our responsibility to be responsible stewards of creation. And as Sabrina said before, this beekeeping was one particular of us channeling people's desire to learn how to be responsible stewards. Tsar ba'alei chayim, the collection of laws that demand that we avoid the unnecessary suffering of animals. So beekeeping is a way to really talk about the different conditions that animals are kept in that are being used for animals within agriculture. And so this is one of the values that really underscores our bee-centered approach to beekeeping. So putting the bees first and considering what they need in order to be healthy and happy, and really prioritizing that over, for example, like honey production. Marabu, the idea of radical amazement by the natural world and celebrating the diversity of the natural world. It is really, really easy to facilitate those moments of radical amazement in the honey house, in the apiary. One of our metrics of how we measure George is by the number of times we hear wow in a particular program, and when working with the bees. Wow. Amazing. And then the fourth value that we're making sure that all of our programs are rooted in is the value of tzedek, of pursuing justice for the earth and for its creatures. One of the materials that we've been making quote cards, which we weave into our educational programs. So one teaching that we draw on a lot is the one from Midrash Kohelet Rabbah about God finishing the creation of the world, leading Adam through the Garden of Eden. And look how unbelievable my creation is. Make sure you do not destroy it. If you do, there will be no one after you to fix it. As Sabrina was talking about before, we know that pollinators are in a state of crisis, and we have a responsibility to ensure that our actions are ultimately helping and not hindering their health and well-being. And then another beautiful teaching that we often use in our programming from the Talmud, and all that God created in this world, the Holy One did not create a single thing without purpose. And it's really, when we start talking in a little bit about our curriculum around pollinators as they relate to food systems, this is a text that will often lead into that.
All right. Bee-supported beekeeping is our sort of umbrella term that holds all of these programs and sort of components to our approach to attempting to save the bees. So it includes education, volunteer opportunities, community celebrations, Shana, products and distribution, our apiary and the honey, planting for pollinators, honey harvest. And again, it's all embedded within Jewish values, and it's our unique way to connect people and pollinators. And as you can see from this slide, we take an approach that's like quite diverse and multifaceted. So someone who's scared of bees and doesn't want to come into the apiary can still participate by planting one of our pollinator gardens, whether it's in the city or a farm. You know, someone we can reach people who are all ages, all backgrounds, all abilities, because of this diverse approach. So we bring our programming into classrooms, we have a farm in the city and the suburbs, and even we'll talk about it a little bit more like at market. So everything from seed to jar involves community and incorporates some element of education. It's a very holistic approach. So our favorite thing to do and our number one rule for helping to save the bees is planting. People are always like, oh, should I get a hive? Should I get a hive? We're always like, no, plant native wildflowers that haven't been sprayed with pesticides and then talk about hives. So we really encourage planting, and we try to involve as many people as possible in as many different spaces as possible to plant for the pollinators. So our sort of biggest, most fanciest, amazing project to date is the Bee Sanctuary at Bela Farm. We've currently planted about 5 out of 20 acres of land with native flowering plants and trees and shrubs. And it's been an incredible experience and a very incredible learning experience. So we've been doing this for the last 4 years, and it's been a bit of a steep learning curve, but in our practice and our process, and we're learning a lot, and I think our bees are really happy. So the design right now, so Bela Farm is 114 acres, and we've allocated 20 acres for the Bee Sanctuary. So the first year we planted 4 acres just with wildflowers, and we kind of split to do, we were spreading seeds, as you can see in this picture. And then we also did something called a bee buffet, which was more intense planting of the same species. In terms of planting habitat for pollinators, best practices seem to be that you want to plant the same species in different patches, so the bees can go and sort of buffet on the same type of flower, bring it back to their nest or to the hive, and then it's just a very efficient way for them to get nectar and pollen. So that was the first year, and then the second year we sort of just observed this 4-acre site, and then this. Should we go to the next slide?
Well, are you actually?
Oh, Yeah.
We have a video, so let's see if this works. Apologies, the sound quality is not great because it's pretty windy in Hillsburg, Ontario, but this will just give you an idea of what Sabrina was just describing.
Good morning from Bela Farm here in the rolling hills of Hillsburg, Ontario. We are standing in our 4-acre bee sanctuary, which is a 4-acre field that we have been planting with mixed native wildflowers to support our honeybees and native pollinators. We are battling some very well established pasture grass, but here we have some New England asters, some black-eyed Susan, some goldenrod, and one of our favorite parts of our bee sanctuary is back here. We have an old gravel pit, and we have planted the perimeter with what we call our bee buffet, or the salad bar. So here we have planted different varieties of native wildflowers more intensively. So here we have some smooth aster. Up here we have some black-eyed Susan. The next plot is hairy beard tongue. And then in the protection of our gravel pit, we have half of our apiary. And I will take you into the apiary now to meet some of our honeybee friends.
Okay, and we have a second video.
So this past summer, we built Beit Shoresh, which is our home at Bela Farm. This is our welcome center, our indoor classroom. And we decided that we were noticing that the bee sanctuary, that 4 acres, was a little bit far from ground zero, from the heart of Shoresh at Bela Farm. So we decided to modify the design a bit and bring the closer so that we could weave it more easily into our programming, especially for little kids and school groups that were coming to the farm. That 4-acre sanctuary is about a 10-minute walk from Beit Shoresh, so wanted to bring it closer because it is a key feature of our programming there. And we also modified the design, tying in some permaculture principles, which you'll see in this video.
Hello, we are at Beit Shoresh at Bela Farm. Beit Shoresh is our welcome and education center in an old tractor shed. So here's our gathering space, our tool work area, and then in the back, our makeshift kitchen. Today is day 2 of our Bela Farm Stewardship Week, fall edition. So we have some volunteers up here at the farm doing some holy work. Today, just outside of Beit Shoresh, we are planting native wildflowers for our pollinator friends. Hey Josh, how's it going? Good. Nice to see you. Hey Alicia, what you planting? Sounds fantastic. How about you, Beth?
I'm planting lance leaf coreopsis.
Amazing. Hey Shoshana, so nice to see you. What are you planting?
I am planting beautiful wild cauliflower.
Amazing. Our bees are so grateful. And that's it.
Okay, so those are our current spaces at Bela Farm, which we are in the process of scaling up and weaving more trees actually into the design process to make sure that the bees have lots of nectar and pollen to feed on in the early spring. We also have pollinator habitat at all of our sites throughout the Greater Toronto area, ranging from deep in the suburbs to deep in the city. The picture on the left is a monarch caterpillar that is in a very, very busy part of downtown. So we've planted a pollinator garden there. The middle picture is a bumblebee nest that we discovered at the Covenant Garden in Vaughan, which is a very big suburb. And the picture on the right is Risa and one of our staff planting some pollinator plants that a young lady donated to us after her bat mitzvah. They were her centerpiece. That's also at Covenant Garden. So as I said before, our #1 tip to saving the bees is creating habitat wherever you can, whether that's balcony, backyards, in the city, in the suburbs, on your farm. And the most incredible thing that we've noticed is you can take an empty field or, a concrete parking lot and turn it into a biodiverse haven for pollinators. Our motto is inspired by Field of Dreams: if you plant it, they will come.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about in terms of our approach to community-supported beekeeping is our apiary, which is at Bela Farm, which you saw in the videos. At Bela Farm, we have between 20 to 30 hives, depends on the day. But we have been working with an amazing mentor, Miley, who is a bee whisperer. And has been training SABs in the fine art and science of beekeeping. We have a couple of videos to show you. You saw we're part in the gravel bowl at Bela Farm in the middle of the bee sanctuary. And the other part of our apiary is behind the shelter of an old horse barn. That's about 5-10 minute walk away. So I'll show you. This is loading up the hives before harvest onto the vintage truck that we drive, just to show you some bee activity. And there you can see our other hives in the background.
Talk about this? Sure. So incredibly enough, well, actually step back a minute. So we live in Toronto. The farm is an hour northwest of here. And actually one of the reasons we decided to keep bees was because they really only need you to check on them every 2 weeks during the growing season. They kind of like to be left alone. Beekeepers really want to be around when their bees swarm, so you can try to catch them. And our bees have swarmed 3 times in the last 5 years, and we've been there every time, and we've seen the swarm every time, which is just unbelievable. I feel like it's a very unique way of them communicating with us. So this is a video of our bees swarming.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so when the bees swarm, that's kind of how the hive will split. It's how they reproduce. So they'll send out a bunch of scout bees who go to find a new place to live. The scout bees will come back to the hive and they'll say to half the hive, okay, we found a place, let's get out of here. So the old queen and half the hive leave and they land somewhere. Usually they land very high up in a tree, so we've had to create crazy contraptions to capture them. But this particular swarm landed on a low branch of an oak tree when I happened to be at the farm with a dear friend of many people in the Jewish Community Farming Network, Liver Pearlstone. She now lives in Israel, but she was at the farm with her 3 young daughters. They were all under the age of 5, and we all suited up and caught the swarm. So this is a video of that.
Yeah, okay, so tell the bee to go to its new home. You watch out, it's gonna fall. Not listening.
Okay, ready? Get me video in this.
Okay. You want to explain?
Okay, so we just caught our first swarm of the season. Trying to get these girls into their new home. Shake, shake. Thank you, oak tree.
What, the oak tree? Yes. Acorns? Yeah. The acorns come in the fall, sweetie.
Okay. I think we kind of did it. I need to get the inner cover. Can we get a picture, Mia?
Yeah, so those are just some of our adventures working with the bees at the Bela Farm. And now we'll talk about how we weave education into this.
So education is woven into everything from planting seeds to harvesting honey to even selling honey, which is what makes our approach so unique and lovely. We are able to animate our programming at diverse spaces throughout the Greater Toronto Area and at Bela. So we have field trips to Bela Farm in the Covenant Garden where day school students will come and learn about our approach to beekeeping and saving the bees at both of those sites. So these are pictures from this year. We hosted our first group of students at Bela Farm, and they got all suited up. They harvested some honey. They didn't actually go into any hives, but we have this incredible model hive, which Risa will show you in a second, that they're able to really dive deep into the hive without having to go into the apiary. The middle picture is me wearing the hat that Reese is wearing with our solar wax melt. Incredible contraption that Josh, who's actually in the webinar right now, built for us. He's an awesome volunteer who's also a carpenter. So we have built
video of that.
Oh, amazing. So we're going to see that. So we have variations of this solar wax melter that we've built over the years, but this one we love, we're very happy with. And we're able to take all the wax from the honey harvest or just excess get throughout the season. We let the sun melt it down, and then we're eventually saving it for our future candle business. But this is what some of the wax looks like. It smells amazing. It has a spectacular shape, and we love to watch the sun melt it.
Okay. So we've also developed over the last few years a lot of curriculum. Sabs went to California earlier this year, and with Amalia and the team at the Shalom Institute's are starting to bring together all of these different pollinator activities to make a curriculum resource. Right now, the part that we contributed is called the Shorish Pollinator Curriculum. In here we have a whole list of different source texts that relate to Jewish source texts that relate to pollinators that are written up here. And then we have a bunch of different activities that we'll just talk through a couple of them now. This is available for anybody who wants to just send us an email and share this resource with you, and keep your eyes and ears open for when something a little bit more significant comes out of the Shalom Institute, God willing, soon. So a few of the activities. One great activity that I left half of upstairs in the one great activity that we use with groups to help introduce to them how important pollinators are to our food system is we break a class of students into smaller groups, give each group 2 cards, insect pollination and wind pollination, and then give them an envelope of 30 or so different kinds of foods that we eat, fruits, nuts, grains, and the students have to together try and divide up the cards and figure out which foods are pollinated by wind and which foods are pollinated by insect. And it's amazing to watch them do this without having talked about it before. And some groups do it by color, do it by whether it's a tree or a plant. So after the students have had a few minutes to figure out what they think intuitively is wind pollinated or insect pollinated, we come together, we break it up, and then of all of these different cards, only about 4 or 5 of them are pollinated by wind, grains, so things like bread and rice and corn, and then the vast majority of the fruits and vegetables that they eat all depend upon insect pollination. So when the students visually see on the ground that only a few of these food items are pollinated by wind and the vast majority are pollinated by insect pollination, I think it really helps to drive home just how important pollinators are to our food system. So this is one activity, and also all of these cards we can send to you the PDF that you can easily just print them and laminate them. Another activity that we do are the stretching activity for little kids, where we go through the life stages of pollinators and they get to embody those different life cycle stages. And we have some images of those different stages as visuals to help the kids really see what it is that they're acting out. And again, we'd be very happy to share these. We also do a real activity with a lot of different.
Risa, could you show the pictures up a little higher?
Oh. So these are the pictures for the life cycle. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
So we have the eggs, the larval stage. What do you call this stage?
The pupa, right? Pupa. No?
The bees hatching. Another activity that we often do is around creating habitat or little homes for our pollinator friends. In here, in our curriculum activity guide, we have some pictures of ones that we make using either tin can paper rolls, where students roll up pieces of paper to essentially make paper straws, gather them together in a tin can. And it's a great way of introducing students to the difference between cherry bees and social bees like our bees. We have, you'll see in a later video, you'll see we have a huge garden. And here is an example of dough that was gifted to us, made with bamboo. And you can actually see some of them filled by, we think, leaf cutter bees that make their eggs and then basically barricaded them inside for their babies to hatch, grow up, and then eat their way out.
Can everyone who's not Lisa please mute themselves? Everyone, because I can hear you breathing and typing, and it's. Thank you.
I can mute all. Don't worry.
Oh
wait, hold on.
Go.
Yeah. So now everyone's muted aside from Lisa.
Okay.
And Sabine.
A really sweet and messy activity that we do is seed balls, which is where you combine together soil, worm castings, red clay, native wildflower seeds, and water, and you basically make soil meatballs. And the beautiful thing about seed balls is, one, it's super, super messy, so the kids love it. And then you can throw them anywhere, and once it rains, essentially the seed balls will dissolve, and whatever seeds in that particular seed mix are best suited to the spot where they've landed, those are the seeds that'll germinate and grow. So instead of you needing to figure out which plants would go best in which mini ecosystem, you just broadcast these seeds, and the ones that are best suited will thrive in that environment. I have a video of making seed balls to give you a sense of the texture that you are aspiring for. It's pretty long, so there's a lot in the science of seed ball making. So we can send that out afterwards if anybody would like. And then in our little guide, there's also ratios that we use for creating seed balls. A little bit about some of the activities that we've developed, and again, we're super happy to share anything and everything. So don't be shy.
So as Risa mentioned, we've been mentored by this incredible woman, Miley Norden, for the last 4 years, and she's now passed the torch on a little bit to us, where we're starting to feel empowered to bring community members of all different ages. So last year was the first time that we started going into the apiary with volunteers and other staff and interns. So these are just some pictures of those moments, and it's a really, really good way to deepen people's connection and appreciation for the bees. You just got to make sure you have enough bee suits.
Volunteer opportunities. Shoresh is a super small organization. We have anywhere between 4 to 6 staff, depending on the time of year. And we're undertaking a lot. And the way that we're able to do so much of this is because of the volunteers. And in particular with our community supported beekeeping, that not only are people really drawn to this and really excited about it, but it's a really, really meaningful and valuable way for them to support the work that we're doing. So volunteers are involved in planting. The day that we first broadcast seed over the 4 acres that we had tilled, up at 30 people come out and stand in rows, and it was almost like if anybody who's a lifeguard, one of those like swimming search and recovers where everybody's like fanning out to make sure that we cast seed in every spot. We also involve the community in building the hives, and this is something that we have found particularly young adults have been really, really excited about being given tools and helping to construct the hives themselves and the frames that we use to collect the honey.
And then the honey harvests have really been a huge hit with volunteers. So thank God this past year we had our biggest harvest so far, 3,000 jars over the summer, fall, and then late fall. And we had dozens and dozens of people getting their hands sticky in the honey house. So at Bela Farm, the woman who owns the farm is an artist, and she has this spectacular studio. You can see her work in the background. But every year, or a few times a year, depending on how much honey there is, we transform the studio into a honey house, which is a really, really beautiful ritual that is a highlight of the year for sure for the Shoresh staff and our volunteers who come back again and again. And the harvest really speaks to people of all. There's little girl on the right is 5. The guy on the left, he actually donated our extractor to us as a gift from his bar mitzvah. So there's something about the harvest that it really resonates with people, and it's a great opportunity for us to spend quality time at the farm with volunteers.
So we have a video now to show of the harvest, what happens once we're in the honey house.
Oh, hi there. Didn't see you coming. We are here at Bela Farm conducting one of our honey harvests and thought that we would show you the process. We are working in this beautiful studio, an artist studio that we've converted into our honey house. So why don't you follow us and we'll show you our whole process. So this is one half of the studio. Our friend Lanny is the artist in residence here, and we've converted the other half of the studio, which belongs to our friend Rochelle, into our honey house. So I'll take the camera and show you all the magic. Oh, hey everyone.
Hey.
Hi. Hey Beth. Maybe you can show us what we're up to today.
Welcome to the honey house. We're so excited to have you. So, this is our stack of supers. A super is one of the big boxes that contains all of the frames. Sort of like that. A few days ago, we separated them from the hive and put bee escapes on them, which is a layer that allows the bees to get out but not get back in. So once, after a few days, the bees all escaped, and we were able to take them inside and start processing. So we process one frame at a time. So this is a frame. As you can see, the bees have built out the comb from where we started, which was not very much wax, and they built out all these honeycombs, filled them with honey, filled them with nectar, flapped their wings enough so that the water content decreased enough to be considered honey. Once they have decided that it's the right amount of water, right amount of sugar, they cap it with wax and it's officially good to go. So this is a really great frame because it's been fully capped on both sides, which tells us that the honey is at optimal readiness. So we bring our frames over here and start the uncapping process, demonstrated by Alicia and Josh. We use these tools to just pull off the top layer of wax. That's a good example. Okay, once both sides are fully uncapped, we'll take a frame, we'll take 9 frames, and we load up the honey extractor. So here are 9 frames ready to go. We spin them, and the force of the spinning, the centrifugal forces, sends all the honey out to the outside of the barrel, which drips down and collects all the honey from these frames into the base. This is what it looks like.
I wish you could smell this.
The smell is delicious. Okay, so once we have all our honey ready to go, we filter it through 2 layers of filter. A top filter, which grabs the big pieces of wax, and then once it makes it through that, a smaller hold filter will grab just the remaining small bits of wax. And this is an efficient way of getting all the wax out of the honey to just have pure honey.
It's raining honey.
Okay, so when we have a full bucket of honey, we bring it over here to our jarring station where Chava will demonstrate how to jar the honey.
Oh, hey, Chava.
All right, great. So here you can have your jar, and this is the bucket that you just used from the extractor to fill. So there's a spigot at the bottom which we unscrew, and we lift it up just so we can start filling the jars.
So this year, we're harvesting, what, 3,000 jars of honey?
Yeah.
You're telling me we did this all by hand?
All by hand, using community resources of volunteers and Shoresh staff.
What? And that's how we harvest our honey. Thanks, everyone.
One thing I will say about our honey harvesting is that it is probably one of the least efficient ways to, if we were trying to really do this commercially, to have everybody doing everything by hand is not going to maximize our production. But part of why we do still have a hand cranked extractor, part of why we do all the uncapping by hand, is to involve as many people as possible. The video you just saw was on a very, very, very honey harvest where it was only staff and volunteers. Sometimes we can have up to 30 people working between all of the different stations that you saw helping to harvest honey together. For the sake of time, we have a video showing the solar wax melter a little bit more closely. We're not going to show up, but if you would like to build a solar wax melter, you should be in touch with us and with Josh, because the one that Josh friend built for us is pretty radically amazing. Okay, really quickly, just in terms of community celebrations. So we host a number of different festivals, community events, opportunities for the broader community, you know, like 100, 200, 300 people to come out and to learn a little bit more about our beekeeping initiative, our honey, to do a whole bunch of different activities, workshops, all centered around pollinators.
Okay, and just a little bit about products and distribution. So this is this year's version of Bela's Bees honey. This is what we sold, about 2,000 jars of for Rosh Hashanah. And then we had a last minute fall harvest, late fall harvest, where we got this beautiful, our bees, Baruch Hashem, were in incredible health and vitality and full production mode all season. This year, we're actually really excited to be selling these gorgeous beeswax Hanukkah candles made by local nuns who are now our dear friends. We're at the tail end of our Hanukkah candle sales, but they seem to be here. And we've also been selling these spectacular Shabbat candles for the last 3 years. So that's the honey, that's the comb. Again, the education gets woven into everything from honey deliveries. We deliver cases of 12 jars to people who purchase that, and we make sure to make an effort to talk to everyone we can and let them know the true value of this honey, gold. We also have usually on average 3 to 5 markets every year where, you know, we're selling our products, but it's really just a beautiful touch point to engage with community members, donors, volunteers, and new friends.
Let's do that. So basically, just to sum up, because we want to make sure that we leave some time for questions, our approach to beekeeping is really about thinking about bees first, really prioritizing their needs, and thinking about how we can engage the community as much as possible, whether it's through planting, educational programs, volunteer opportunities, buying the honey, helping to harvest it. So really thinking as much as possible, prioritize bees, weave people in, and ground all of that work in Jewish values. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to stop that so I can see all of you. Amazing. So yeah, that was Shoresh's community supporting beekeeping program, driven by the power of many, the people and pollinators that make it all happen. Thank you. And that was our first ever webinar. Yay!
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at us.
Wow.
And now it's so sweet to see all of you and not just see our PowerPoint presentation. So yeah, we'd love to take one other quick resource to show just that it exists for anybody that is interested in getting into beekeeping, but particularly honey harvesting. We created a sustainable products manual that goes through, there's a timeline for thinking through everything that you need to do for your bees, a honey harvest protocol, set up the honey house, what are all the different stations, the materials that you need. We have a whole bunch of different forms for tracking during honey harvest, so you have a sense of how many hives are you drawing from, how many frames, how many jars does that translate to. So all of this stuff exists. So if it's of service to anybody, we're very happy to share. Okay, I'll stop talking, open questions.
Oh, that know Risa, this is her brain on paper.
I just wanted to chime in. Lisa and Sabrina, thank you so much. It was, in planning this, I couldn't imagine as beautiful of a webinar as that. That was unbelievable. Thank you so much. I think maybe also during the question and answer thing, maybe in the end, we could also see the solar wax melter. We could just play it for people that would want it. And I also wanted to, before we take questions and answers, if anyone has questions, requests, suggestions of topics, or if you want to lead a webinar, you don't have to suggest that now. Just get a hold of me and send them my way, and I would love to talk to you. also, I wanted to say that the next webinar is going to be in January 3rd, and we have a lineup that includes Growth Torah and hopefully some of these are tentative, but Abundance Farm and Urban Adama and Milk and Honey and Jewish Farm School and Eden Village. And we're really looking forward to all of those. And hey, look, that is beautiful. Okay, so I'm not sure the best way to do it, but if anyone has questions, they can unmute themselves and just politely start talking. Or you could text in a chat and then ask the question, whichever. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm gonna stop.
I have so many questions also, and I don't want to be the first one to jump in, but I want to be the first one to jump in. I'm going to try and pick my most important questions. So I'm curious about money. If you can tell us if this, first of all, just how much you sell each jar for, but also like if this is in your mind, does it make a little bit of money? Does it pay for itself? I mean, I know the labor is kind of like, you can't put a price on so much hand labor, but yeah, I'm curious how you guys see this, because we are going to have our first product sale on Thursday, tomorrow, of any products that we've ever sold. For ourselves, for our own money. So we're thinking about all these things. And then similarly, I want to ask about just like, you know, what kind of readiness you feel like would be needed for someone who's never had a beekeeping program to jump in. So I have a teacher who keeps bees and is like, hey, let's bring bees here. And a couple people have suggested that, but you know, there's bears, there's children, it's not a small undertaking. So those are my two questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so money question's a great question. Our board of directors was really questioning whether or not this actually made sense. And so they made us actually figure out what is the true cost of a jar of honey. And that included everything from the jar, the amount of time that Sab spends taking care of the bees, running all of these programs, time spent in markets. And we figured out that in order to just break even, that we would need to sell each for $180 a jar. We sell them for $18 a jar. Because we only really sell face-to-face, we don't sell them in stores. We only sell them at markets or directly so that we can tell the story, because $18 for a jar of honey this big, if you just saw it on a shelf in a store, that would seem absurd. We have signage that we have at all of our markets, and we can definitely share this. What is in my jar of honey? We have one sign that says like $180. This honey is valued at $180 a jar. Ask us why. And we say that each jar of honey represents not just the product, but the fact that we are planting 4 acres of wildflowers to support these bees, and that we're in the community in all of these educational programs. So it was amazing for us to figure out that our honey is actually valued at $180 a jar. It feels really good to share that and to tell people that they're getting an amazing deal at buying it for only $18 a jar. We actually find that at most of our markets, people will give us a 20 or 40, tell us to keep the change. And, you know, bring in, like this year we'll have brought in about $23,000 in product sales, but I would say we've brought in at least double that in terms of donations from people who are particularly excited about the bee narrative. So that's why our board lets us still do this.
Risa?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, it's Amalia. I'm just assuming you're giving Canadian, right?
Canadian. Sorry,
Yeah.
Canadian.
No, for sure.
A few other things to factor in just with pricing is that, you know, the bees' labor isn't paid for, and there's millions of them making this honey. And also winter losses. So last year we lost 80% of our hives because of pesticide poisoning, and just it was a hard. So we have to repopulate the hives the ones that collapse every winter. So the first year, I think our losses were 30%, and then the second year they were 40%. Last year they were 80%. Hopefully this year they'll be less than 10%. But these are things out of our control, and bees are getting quite expensive. So that's definitely something to factor in as well.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good maker as a product. I think that for us, so much of our narrative is around this, and that's what helps us to engage donors and school groups, and so it feeds into all of our other income streams. In terms of readiness.
In terms of readiness and starting up, I would say with anything, pilot it, start small, and especially with beekeeping, make sure you have a mentor. The traditional knowledge passing around beekeeping was always mentor to student. It wasn't something that you could learn through books or online. So I highly encourage people to find themselves a mentor, either through a local beekeeping society or through networks. Start small, and go from there, and make sure to really incorporate planting habitat as a key part of the programming. So then if God forbid you lose your hives, at least you still have what to work with afterwards.
I see that there's a question here, how many bee suits do you all have? I think we have 2 full adult suits, another 2. I'm wearing a suit right now. You can't tell. We walking through our JCF.
So we have 2 full adult suits, 1 kid suit, 1 jacket with a veil, and then we have this awesome, this is my new suit now, I love it. It's just a hat with a veil, and I wear it with a long sleeve shirt. I know that Amalia had helped the Shalom Institute this year with their suits. Amalia, I don't know if you want to speak to how many suits they had bought for their beekeeping program, but they had funding to secure a lot more than we do.
Yeah, they did. I was taking up groups of anywhere from 10 to 15, and it ended up being that they had purchased adult and preschool, and the kids there were all school age and high school, so we had to do like a very fast run and purchase because I couldn't suit people initially. But 10 to 15 of each size, you really, either you have to have enough for a whole group, or you kind of have to put into your planning time that you're going to take people in a few rounds, which also works. You can have one educator teaching about what's going to be seen, and then another educator actually taking people to the hive.
That's something that Sabrina mentioned that we didn't actually show, was that we have here. Actually have here a model hive.
This thing is amazing.
So we're in like a children's room at the JCC.
Model hive. So it's actually a super, and it has these frames that basically tell the story of the beehive without having bees in it, and we love this. We love to bring it into classrooms. Our mentor Miley actually produced and printed these for us, so we can ask her if people are interested in buying this. We can ask her how to get them. So yeah, I think, you know, it is important to have suits. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a kids one right now. And I would give it time, get to know your community, see who even wants to come into the apiary. It took us 3 years to start bringing people in. So have some suits, not too many, and see what your community needs. And again, if you diversify your programs, it's not really that much about bringing the hives as it is about planting things and harvesting honey and all that other stuff.
How about the bee hats?
So these, this actually a friend gave me. She used to run a program called Scientist in the School. She bought these at the dollar store, and then she added a crown. Everyone seemed to love this one. I think they're awesome. We wear them all the time. They make for. Any other questions? Oh, just a few things to flag. Amalia's Juniper's Facebook page, if people are interested in signing up for that, there's some great content there. Yeah.
I had a question. I was wondering about sort of the broader organizational budget that's supporting sort of the whole endeavor, rather than sort of specifically the bee focus, but just kind of the the whole sort of team effort of the nonprofit. And also, I guess, what's a minimalist assessment of like how much would be needed to kind of start from ground up on the educational focus, nonprofit focus with this?
So Shorish's operating budget is $300,000, and it's hard to say like how much of that is really. I feel like our work with pollinators is woven into almost everything that we do. All of our field trips to the Covenant Garden, to Bela Farm have an element of weaving in our pollinators. Yeah, I don't really know what, maybe Amalia, is there like, do you have like a bit of something in particular that you're looking to understand about financial side?
No, that's helpful. It just kind of just trying to get a sense of, you know, how much donor or funder support would be needed to kind of launch something like you're describing.
This program, so it kind of like broadly crosses so many sources buckets. So it brings revenue through honey and beetles. We get revenue from programs. People are really drawn to the programs related to beekeeping and helping the bees. And then donors love it too. And again, like I said at the beginning, the thing about honey is that it creates this tangible connection between environmental issues and Jewish tradition, Rosh Hashanah. So it has been a really good way for us to be like, this is what we're talking about. This is what like the Jewish environmental movement looks like. And so that has been a really amazing way to communicate with donors and to be able to kind of get the message across. But again, always the best approach.
I think we've hooked a number of donors that we were courting just by giving them a jar of honey and telling them the story. And part of selling the honey, that a lot of our donors will buy cases and then give them out as gifts. And on the back of our honey jars tells a little bit about our story, how this was brought to you by Jewish beekeepers. So it's like each jar is marketing in and of itself.
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing about all of this is that it kind of started as a crazy idea that we, like, that's a crazy idea, but sure, we started really small. It was right before kind of colony collapse disorder became on people's radar in a more broad way. And I think that whole approach has really into staying on the cutting edge of things by being like, let's not be afraid to do things that seem a bit crazy. Let's not be afraid to push back when the board is like, why are you guys keeping bees? What is this all about? Why are you spending so much time at the farm? If you've got an idea that seems kind of crazy, start small, try it out and see what happens.
That's his words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Any final?
Recent, and Sabrina, I have a question. A lot of us on the call have Jewish community farms, and I was wondering, and I think maybe we should, if there's not any other questions, we should wrap it up. But a lot of us are part of Jewish community farms and may not have a beekeeping or on site, and may not have honey. If they wanted to purchase some honey so that they could promote your farm and sell in the gift shop or be part of it, is that available? Do you have like a program to do that?
Program to do that.
Like if one of the Jewish community farms wanted to buy a bunch of honey and to promote the farm.
We can take orders. We don't have one of those scanners to be able to sell this like in a store because it costs a lot of money to get a barcode. But we've done before, or we could do that if somebody wanted to buy a case. We could figure out. I think shipping from Canada to US would be probably prohibitively, but like I'm likely coming out to California in February for JCF meeting, so we'll take orders. I'll see.
Cool.
get across the border. And yeah, I'd say if anybody is interested in getting some of the honey and figuring out a way to distribute it, send me an email, research.ca, and we can figure out how to get across the border.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. This has been so amazing, and please let's continue the conversation on Facebook. And so we'll post some more stuff about bees and beekeeping. And if there's any other questions, we could take it to there, and probably we'll be able to answer them. Do you have anything, any last things you want to share?
Thank you guys. This is so great. Thank you, Pasachia. Thank you, Risa. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody.
That's right.
You're so cute.
Did you need anything else from us, or are we good?